to the LEC studio. Misfits Gaming, they started the summer season with a bang yesterday with a win over Fnatic. And in our next matchup, they are looking to go 2-0 versus the new SK lineup. Let's start by talking about SK. Yesterday, they lost to Astralis, but Astralis is now 2-0. So, you know, maybe that isn't too much of a shame for them. But they are, of course, working with Treatz, who is now playing in the jungle. Guldborg, it was kind of a puzzling change, I think, from the outside looking in. What did you make of his first appearance as a jungler?
I was honestly okay with what he did in the early game. They came into a split map situation, he got a few ganks up in the bot lane, and they actually made it work. Like, SK in the bot lane played through it pretty nicely. I gotta say, they started stacking up the Drakes because of this as well, and I feel like where it went wrong from SK was really in the late game, where they just made some questionable team decisions. But if you want to pinpoint a mistake down to threats, I don't really think you could do that yesterday.
Vander?
And ultimately, when it comes down to sort of like judging the performance of the new player, you know, Treatz going to the jungle, of course, not new on the team, and Jesiz too, that was the duo I had my eyes on, because I'm thinking, okay, support role swaps into the jungle. Surely this duo is like one of the best jungle support duos in the league, because Treatz knows exactly when he wants Jesiz to roam and look for plays, and we saw a little bit of that playing around mid lane, finding some duo ganks that worked out to success. And on the other hand, Treatz, or Jesiz rather, while they had the good start, Jesiz was a little bit too quick to pull the trigger in a lot of those fights. He came out and said afterwards he was just a little bit too excited, and I think if the nerves settled down a little bit, we're going to see a much more solid game from him in particular.
I think that's a good read, and I have to admit I was one of those people who were like, oh, Jesiz is going back in the team. We've seen that before, but credit where credit is due. I mean, I think the fact that he was willing to pull the trigger and trying to look for those opportunities can be very good for SK Gaming, but they're going to have a great game up versus the Misfits, because in spring, Vetheo and Misfits kicked things off by dismantling Fnatic, and yesterday we watched history repeat itself. Guldborg, this guy with 2 quadruples on his Akali, making his name known.
Yeah, honestly, I'm scared to talk about this because, you know, last spring as well, we were like, all right, this guy is absolutely insane, and then nothing just happened. But this time around, back-to-back quadruples, amazing Akali performance, and honestly, I don't even feel like it was just Vetheo on the Akali. I feel like the bot lane as well, and the entire composition they designed with heavy backline dive, we're all on the same page. Last spring I felt like the bot lane of Misfits kind of looked like a shadow of their former self because it was big names, but this time around I thought, all right, they were actually performing well in the matchup as well.
Yeah, and looking at this Misfits team, I don't like to jump the gun off of just one game, but this team might actually just be pretty good. Like, honestly, watching how they played the game, they fell to a pretty big deficit early on, a lot of tough laning matchups. But what I look for in particular, team fight positioning and how they choose their fights. And we saw a lot of really great plays from Vetheo and the team knowing when he can go into that final team fight around mid lane. Kobbe had this great killer instinct using a wall to sort of buy himself his own protection when he went into the backline. It's these type of intricacies in the team fights that I actually didn't see at all in the spring split that I think make Misfits look very good coming into summer.
We'll see how they evolve. And of course, the big question here is they did this at the beginning of the split also last time around, but then it kind of got stuck when the other teams were evolving besides them and beyond them even. What do you think they have to focus on to keep it going in these first most important weeks in the summer season?
Well, first off, I actually think they have a meta that suits their playstyle a lot. Like, we know what these guys spams and solo queues well with the champion. If we take a look onto the comp yesterday as well, Lee Sin, the Udyr, Akali, Kai'Sa, Alistar, it just screams we want to go in. And a lot of these players are mechanically, individually skilled. So I think if it keeps going like this, if they can keep the momentum going where they know what their game plan is when they actually hit the rift and what to play for with their composition, then I can actually see them evolve quite nicely.
And we have to remember that they were very close to the playoffs even last spring, but spring ended in heartbreak for the Rabbits then. But in summer, they are looking to bounce back. So let's see if they can go 2-0 so far.
Let's see if they can. I'm Medic, he's Vedius. We're here for the second game of the day. SK Gaming up against Misfits Gaming. And it's going to be a good one, I'm sure. SK, of course, losing to Astralis yesterday. A lot of that down to White Knight's incredible Lee Sin kick that caught out Jezu. And my question is today whether or not they'll be able to just bring a little bit more composure to the stage, because Jesiz himself tweeted. He said, hey, guys, that was on me. I struggled a little bit. I was a little nervous coming back onto the LEC stage, even though, you know, they're at home. And he made a few mistakes in some of the later game fights against Astralis.
Well, he's going to have his work cut out for him because Vander was very impactful in yesterday's game. He landed multiple multi-man headbutt pulverize with his Alistar, and he overall had a fantastic performance with it. So I think that he, alongside Vetheo, have looked very, very good, and I'm excited to see what they can do as they continue their momentum forward. Can they even keep this momentum going? Because as Sjokz said, they did start off strong at the beginning of last split, but then they started to taper off. So we kind of want to see a little bit more consistency from this team, whether or not it will actually pay off in their favor.
I mean, there is one constant for Misfits over the last few years, and that's their spring performance is better than their summer performance. So I'm sure they as a team want a lot more consistency across the board as we get on into Champion Select. It's going to be a barnstorm already. It's our last game of the day as well, so we can use up all of our energy, we can use up all of our mojo, all of our juices, we can get them out there. We're like, guys, it's SK versus Misfits.
Woo! Woo! We're going to be jumping into the draft as both these teams kick off for their second game of the splits. Whoa!
Let's go!
Kevin's gone as a banger for Game 2 draft. Let's have a look. Sylas and Renekton being taken off the board. The Sylas ban is quite interesting. The Akali also going to be taken away from Vetheo. You feel like the gauntlet is being thrown down right now. SK showcasing their respect against Misfits mid lane.
A huge amount of respect from SK. Of course, 2 hours subbing in for SK as Blue has had some medical issues recently. Of course, we wish him a speedy recovery, but yesterday had a good performance on the Orianna. 5-0-5 he ended up. Wasn't able to pull out the win for his team, but expectations are that mid lane battle is going to be where our eyes are focused for a lot of this game. Rumble removed, Renekton removed. They will continue their 100% pick ban presence here in the LEC and around the world. Thresh taken away, and now, Misfits, you got to get rid of Gwen. You got to do it. Snip, snip, get her out of the game. This is where you say something?
Well, I was kind of
hoping
waiting
that they'd ban it.
Well, no, I'm waiting.
Oh. Do you see? It would be the first Gwen we've seen in the LEC?
If it's left open. And it's going to be. All right.
Okay.
Lulu has been banned, which means that the Gwen insta-lock should just come in from SK. Let's have a look. Will we get the Gwen insta-lock? I'm a big fan of Gwen. I've been playing her a lot recently. I think she is very, very good, along with the rest of the world, it would seem. And she is going to be locked in. The question is, where will she go? A very flexible champion that can go across the board. Of course, this will mean that Misfits get their hands on Ezreal. Kobbe, a long-time veteran here in Europe, and Ezreal is definitely one of his most played all time. So he's going to be very comfortable on the champion and this champion is very strong in the current meta.
Definitely is. Ezreal Karma, a very oppressive bottom lane as well if you want to get it. Razork going to go towards his Udyr once again, but my eyes are still so much on that Gwen. Very surprising to see it get through. She is so oppressive when she gets a couple of items under her belt. Kai'Sa Nautilus locked in for SK. Of course, Ezreal can buffer away from the Nautilus hook if he ever does get caught out in the lane. But it does mean perhaps Misfits will be more apprehensive about picking something like the Karma. Because of course the Nautilus, all he needs to do is land one hook on her and she will be deleted. Instead, they will go for the Braum for a little bit more safety in that bottom lane.
Okay, I like the Braum answer. I think that Ezreal Braum is a very defensive lane, a very difficult lane to punish. But I also think that it can do very well into this 2 versus 2. If Nautilus ever tries to get aggressive, the re-engage from this duo is devastating.
Yep.
So Misfits have a strong bot side of the map. Doesn't necessarily mean they will be able to maintain that push priority though. We'll have to wait and see as we jump into the game and move into the second round of bans.
So let's see what we still have on the cards. Of course, our usual bans have been taken away, but I'm looking at things like the Lee Sin.
Yeah, Viego is still up.
Varus doesn't really matter that much.
Unlikely,
because, both the AD carries have been picked, but as you say, Viego, Lee Sin still available. Xin and Bolibert taken away by Misfits because they, of course, already have their jungler locked in. Now, I have heard rumor of Gwen flex into the jungle. I know Kobbe was talking about it a little bit last night on Lane X Lane, but it's not something we too commonly see. In fact, I think every time she has been played so far in summer, it has been top lane around the major regions.
Anyone that's been following the LCK, typically been seeing Kana run it up towards the top lane with the TP and Ignite. But I like this Zoe ban coming out from SK, removing the option away from Vetheo. I think that it is still one of his big comfort picks, and denying it from him I think is a smart move. But the answer from Misfits will be this Viego. I still have mixed opinions on the champion. I think that if he can get those resets off, he can be very, very powerful. But with the current itemization, I don't think that he has the damage unless he's really has access onto those carries. But either way, we're gonna wait and see as the fights progress, as SK round out their composition with a Lillia and a Lucian.
Okay.
So they're going for that AP80 mid jungle. They have very strong side laners. SK are definitely gonna be winning the 1v1s in the late game. Team fighting, I think, is a bit of a mixed bag. They do have double AD carry. They do have some dive power. You have access to the backline, but I think getting onto that Ezreal is going to be very difficult in these team fights. Also, when you have the scaling of a Viktor with Misfits, I think that if you play a traditional front-to-back, Misfits should have the advantage, but their engage is not the strongest. They don't have the easiest way to start fights. They're kind of relying on some of the poke from Viktor and Ezreal, and maybe a flank from Udyr. With all the mobility on the side of SK, I think it's going to be difficult for Misfits to get the fights that they want. So, pretty interesting compositions across the board. I'm excited to see how things play out for both these teams. But the one thing I will say is that SK in the late game, that Gwen is a terror, both in team fights and in a side lane. And when handled properly, can be a devastating 1v9 machine.
It's the first Gwen we have seen here in the LEC Vedius. SK versus Misfits after this. And on to Summoner's Rift we go. Early on, we see Ward comes out there. The recall from Treatz to get himself a sweeper so he can make sure that Ward is removed.
So let's talk about top lane.
Let's do it.
Because Gwen versus Viego is the top lane matchup of characters that are realistic, yet carry unrealistically sized weapons. And
Okay.
both also wield very large blades with the purpose of cutting and slashing at their opposition. One will snip while the other slash. Very important to see.
Okay, I'll make sure to keep that one in mind.
Notice that both are running Ignite TP. Now for Gwen, typically, the reason why we see this from Gwen players is because of the W can actually provide that additional bit of safety. The dash is on a very low cooldown. When you use it, early levels, of course, it is still quite high, but if you attack anything, so whether it be a tower, whether it be a minion, enemy champion, it will cut the cooldown of her E in half. Which means that because of its low cooldown when going for these skirmishes, you actually have a surprising amount of mobility, and you can also use it as an aggressive tool in the laning phase. On top of the fact that the W will mitigate any sort of ability connecting as long as they are outside the range of that circle, she can be relatively safe and she doesn't need that flash. Viego, on the other hand, is very reliant on his Shroud. Of course, the Shroud does provide an element of mystery, and you can be difficult to spot if you don't have things like a control ward available, but his dash is much slower and easier to interrupt and get in the way of. So I think that is a little riskier for a Viego to be running it. However, I do think that if he wants to go toe-to-toe against the Gwen, it makes sense so that you do have that combat summoner spell to be able to trade a little bit more evenly in the 1v1.
And of course, both of them running Conqueror in the matchup as well. We see these prolonged trades between an AP and an AD bruiser in that top lane, or more, I guess they're more carry top laners rather than pure out bruisers, where we would see a Renekton usually. 2 hours pushing in here, just spotting out Razork on the Razorbeaks. And early doors, it looks like it's HiRit who has gained control of the lane. We saw him hit level 2 first. Jenax is going to dash forward, HiRit going in with the harrowed path, gets the Spectral Maw stunned down, and the Ignite is ticking. Jenax should survive this, but will have to TP back to the lane.
Very likely, yeah, really good trade from HiRit, leveraging the level advantage. Ooh, he may even be able to interrupt this, and he will. Very well played from HiRit. He's going to keep the pressure on. Treatz is hovering around, but not going to land the dash. So, and now Razork can use this priority to offer some assistance, of course, setting up
Double
to contest
scuttle.
that top Scuttle Crab. Not sure if he'll be able to get both, as we see 2 hours getting very low against Vetheo. We'll have the
That's the dash
flash.
away.
Not going to use it. All right, so Vetheo doesn't want to overcommit. Just going to force 2 hours back. Not the best look for a Lucian in this 1v1 matchup. I know that Viktor can be quite powerful in the early laning phase thanks to his Q spam ability. But even so, typically you expect Lucian to have control, and he does have the push, but so far he has been bullied out of the laning phase. So Misfits, top and mid, going very well in the early laning phase. Hasn't netted in any significant advantages as of yet. But we'll see how it progresses. As we can see, Misfits bot lane being pushed in, which shouldn't come as much of a surprise, given the 2v2 that they do find themselves in.
Playing a much safer lane down towards that bottom side of the Ezreal Braum. We do see a little dash forward there from Jenax. Razork's going to wait for Jenax to walk in towards this bush. And there is the Hallowed Mist.
Yep.
Of course, you can be attacked inside the range of that, so if Udyr runs up to you and slaps you as a bear, unsurprisingly, a bear in melee range is going to do some damage, but if you saw a Spectral Maw or something, or a stun coming from long range, if it's outside of the mist, it doesn't land.
Well, HiRit's stun, for example, right?
That's what Spectral Maw is.
Ah, right, I didn't realize that.
That's why ability names are important,
names.
Vedius,
Yeah, no, it doesn't make, why would you call it Spectral Maw?
Because
Isn't it like glowy hands?
it's a Spectre, and it's actually a mouth that comes out. So it's a Spectral Maw.
Stun you. Spectral Maw.
Spectral Maw stun you. It's exactly the reasoning behind that name.
That makes sense, yeah. That's why I shouldn't name abilities, because I would have just named it Stunny Ball of Depression. Yeah.
I mean, in COVID times, that's pretty accurate. Let's be honest. I think we've all been hit by one of those over the last 2 years.
True. Very, very true. Hopefully things are on the mend as we see a good trade from Twohoyrz in the mid lane, proccing his press the attack. Getting a good trade off. Razork, once again, doing what he did yesterday, very active in looking for ganks. With the jungle changes, the respawn timers are a little bit longer now, so you do have slightly larger windows to actually look for these plays, and Razork is very proactive in trying to utilize those windows. He has always been quite an aggressive jungler. He does like to play for his lanes. Back when he was playing with Febiven, it really was the Razork Febiven show, where he would often try and get Febiven ahead and really play through that mid lane, and we can see that his playstyle hasn't really changed much, and is still looking to try and be aggressive. That has been Treatz has gotten a small CS advantage, but both junglers will now meet in Razork's half of the map.
Yeah, Razork should have control of this right now. Vetheo can just walk across. Treatz trying to step forward, does have the smite just coming off cooldown, but decides he does not need the Razor Beaks for the time it being. Takes away the Scryer's Bloom. That's a small victory for Treatz, who, as you said, has kept even with Razork through this early game. Neither jungler really able to find a good gank or find a gank that has at least led to a kill. But Razork's presence around the top lane and HiRit's playing of the matchup has led to him getting about a 20 CS lead as the culling goes out. Veteo's going to have to flash 2 I feel like he could have flash followed that if he wanted to be just that little bit more greedy. Instead, just forces a Vetheo away.
No need to take the risk. Also, Twohoyrz had very low mana, so perhaps he didn't quite have enough left to follow up. But the slow that came through from Treatz was absolutely massive there, because it really set up Twohoyrz to land the culling and force Veteo's flash out. And now he has that summoner spell advantage for a later play. So overall, good stuff from him. So SK's lane is bouncing back just a little bit. Small advantage now gained in mid. Pretty big deficit up towards the top side of the map. HiRit's playing this 1 versus 1 matchup very well, playing it quite aggressively. And I think that early laning phase is where Gwen can be punished, especially against strong early duelists that do have sustain like the Viego does. So overall, good stuff from HiRit as Razork now sending it for an invade.
Could be a little difficult here. Vander and Razork have teamed up on this red buff. Treatz is going to try and walk in and take it away, but Razork will secure it. There's the blast cone for them. They get back over to the Dragon Pit.
Cleanly done from the Misfits jungle support combo. We can see that Kobbe is at a bit of danger here. The flank from Jesiz is coming through.
I mean, he's got flash and jump here. Swell Seed's not going to hit, and doesn't even need to use either of them.
In fact, he's going to use it aggressively. Kobbe showcasing his veterancy there. Not going to fall for any of these tricks. No predictions will come through. So, pretty slow game in the early... Oh, as I say that, Jenax committing. Good use of the ultimate, chunks out HiRit. You can see how much damage Jenax does have at his disposal once he hits level 6. Now 2Hours may catch HiRit out.
got no flash. He only has Ignite here. He's going to try and dash away with the Spectral Maw, but 2Hours is here. And 2Hours is on the board, picking up exactly where he left off yesterday.
Excellent roam and really good setup from Jenax. He knew he had the wave stacking. He knew that there was a window for 2Hours to make that roam happen. He hard commits, and while he doesn't get the kill, he will find himself with an assist. So, SK, they were struggling a little bit at the very early stage of the lane, but they've been able to bounce back very nicely, and now they find themselves with first blood.
About 1,000 gold ahead as well, Vedius. Across the board, they have just built up these advantages. You can see 500 gold in the mid lane, now a 400 gold lead for Jenax in the top lane as he was able to pick up a plate and deny that extra CS away from HiRit. Bot lane, relatively even, about 200 gold between the two AD carries, but it's really top mid that are getting ahead here for SK. And you give some credit to Treatz as well. He's been in the right place at the right time, landing those slows to help his laners out.
I'm just really impressed with Twohoyrz and what he's been able to do, you know. Yesterday, you mentioned it, he had a great Orianna performance, and today he's playing very well so far. I'm excited to see what he can do. Like, you don't get many opportunities like this, and of course, Blue is suffering some from health issues right now, and as we mentioned, we really do hope that he gets a speedy recovery, but this gives a huge shock for a young player like Twohoyrz, who was in the EU Masters, and I think is really making the most of the opportunity that he has been given, and been really impressed with what we've been seeing from him so far. Hopefully he can maintain that throughout the rest of this game and tomorrow as well.
I was part of the sub-up team that took Carmine Corp, the eventual winners, to all 3 games in the quarterfinals and had a very good performance against them. So it is great to see him succeed, but not too surprising that he is a very good player, because we have seen him have success in EU Masters already. SK going to bring up their support to take away the Rift Herald. You can see Jesiz and Treatz teaming up a few times throughout this game, and while that's happening, Razork's going to be like, okay, we'll give you the Rift Herald if we can take the Dragon.
Braum.
As you say, HiRit is on a ward here, and he didn't realize it. And here comes Twohoyrz once again. Jenax with the knee to work, and HiRit is going to get jabbed with a vaccine. Twohoyrz takes the kill, 2-0 on this Lucian right now, and Jezu, just respecting the fact that Misfits are on the bot side, says, okay, I can back away, place a ward in here. Maybe we can defend underneath tower, but we don't really need to. A long-range swell seed, if Misfits did go for the dive, would stop them from being able to do anything, but they will not go for the dive, and they won't even manage to get too many plates out of it. I think they picked up one there right at the end. TP now used by HiRit to get back towards the top side, but this is a great start here from SK.
Yeah, I really like that we're seeing these roams come out from Twohoyrz consistently up towards the top side. When you don't have flash, you want to try and punish it. Obviously, with the Ignite, you have a lot of potential power, so you kind of also want to try and play through that lane, but Razork has spent a lot more of his early game pathing towards mid and the bot side of the map. Yes, he got his team the early Drakes, but SK have taken advantage of that, and they've been putting HiRit further and further behind. Twohoyrz now sits with 2 kills. He is now in a very commanding position, and coming into the mid-game fights, he's going to be in a very powerful spot, which will only make things easier for SK as they transition into playing around the side lanes later on.
You can see as well, Twohoyrz just taking away that Scryer's Boom, making sure there's no control ward in that Tribush in case he looks for another play. Rift Herald still available for Treatz. He's got that in his inventory, and so with only 2 plates left on the top lane, it seems a very susceptible target. However, SK could just say, we're winning this lane well enough already, let's use that Rift Herald somewhere else and try and crack mid lane tier 1, which is usually the priority target.
They do have a lot of options playing against a Viktor who has a lot of wave clear. Mid lane is definitely a viable option. You can see Razork, a bit of unfortunate timing there. He was just hovering over a potential dive, and then he starts roaming away. But Treatz and Twohoyrz can use the priority that they have in mid to claim control. Another culling comes through.
Literally forcing Razork away for a control ward, Vedius. Twohoyrz is playing pretty confidently right now. Treatz is going to catch out HiRit as well. There's the swell seed. Does Treatz go for anything more here, or does he just say, okay, HiRit, you got to back away? Because of this, Treatz doesn't have to use the Rift Herald up towards the top lane. You're going to get these plates anyway because HiRit's backed away. He will now work his way back to the lane, but you can see, like, forcing HiRit away gives you so many more options because you don't have to worry about there being someone underneath that tower.
And have a look at this now. SK bringing their bot lane up towards mid to help secure as many plates as possible and get as much value off of this Rift Herald as they can. Twohoyrz was able to hit the tower as well, which means that he's guaranteed to get these plates. Only 160 gold, but good damage means that this will be easier to siege a little bit later on. You imagine that SK will look to play for that second Herald as well to make it a little bit easier to siege onto these towers. And as you said, that top lane is so advantageous for Jenax right now that he can just prioritize on playing for those plates. We'll see if Twohoyrz finds himself another roam in the near future. But all across the board, SK looking good. Their laning phase looking very clean. I like the proactivity that we've been seeing from them. Misfits definitely have a little bit more of a scaling comp with the Ezreal, waiting for that first core item before you really look to fight. Same for Vetheo, you're waiting to have the upgraded E, the upgraded Q. You ideally want your items completed before you try to do anything, so the lack of proactivity isn't too surprising, but the fact that HiRit has been put so far behind was probably not something that Misfits was planning on.
I don't think you ever plan on your top lane Viego being put this far behind, but we did see yesterday Misfits come back from being miles behind in the early game. Whipper was 6-1 on the Rumble, for goodness sake, and still Misfits are able to win out on team fights. A lot of it off the back of their man in the mid lane, Vetheo, who had a stellar performance on Akali, 11-2-4 with 2 quadra kills. Now, I wasn't able to find the numbers, but I'm pretty sure not many people have ever got 2 quadra kills in a professional game and not picked up a penta. So great stuff from him yesterday, and a lot rides on his back because, as you say, Viktor scales so well as the game goes on here.
The problem is he's playing Viktor. And I think, though, as a champion, I think, yeah, he has great scaling, but the same level of agency that you would typically have on an Akali is not quite there. And I think that especially when SK is going to look to be playing these side lanes, his primary role in this game is going to be being a presence in team fights, but also wave clear duty, so that Twohoyrz and Jenax are not just monstrously taking down these towers in a side lane. But we'll have to wait and see as the game progresses. As I mentioned, both quite interesting comps, very different to what we've had throughout pretty much the entire year. But this is kind of the nature of how the meta has evolved. Flex picks have become so much more rampant. We've been seeing a lot of different picks all across the board, and I'm excited to see how things play out in the upcoming fights. Things have been a little slow action-wise, a lot of focus on farming for the time being. And as we mentioned, SK have been able to find themselves with advantages in the top side thanks to 2Hours great roams. But the dragon is now spawning. Will this be the first opportunity for a big fight? Or will a team simply concede it and look to trade for something else somewhere elsewhere on the map?
I think it's really difficult for Misfits to take this because Jenax just finished his Riftmaker and has a TP advantage, so he can go back up towards the top lane here and still TP down towards this bottom side fight if it begins to start. You've got Liandry's complete on Treatz, 2Hours has his Gale Force. Jezu is just short of his first item, but will be building up towards that Q Evolve with the pickaxe and the serrated dirk alongside the Noon Quiver. So SK are just so strong right now, 2,500 gold ahead. You can see they are the ones posturing around the dragon for the time being.
Yeah, it looks like that Misfits is just going to concede this one for now. They're going to focus on scaling up, waiting for a couple more items to be completed. That will be the cannon gone for Vetheo, but he's going to use the ultimate to interrupt the culling from 2Hours as the first Infernal of the game, and only Infernal of the game, will be secured by SK. 1 Drake apiece, and now let's see if Razork can cross-map. Jenax can use that dash to just glide on over to safety. Vander could be in a bit of danger, but with the Unbreakable, he's likely going to mitigate all that damage. Pings are coming down towards the bot side of the map, but overall, a very steady game for both teams.
And SK were very steady yesterday against Astralis as well, so it's not too surprising that they are going for...
It was quite back and forth, bloody.
Yeah, but it was a longer game, I guess. That's what I meant by steady. I should have used the... It was a 40-minute game. And it feels like we might be in for a little bit of a longer one here as well. The question is whether Misfits will be able to find some plays to get themselves back in the game, and that's what they're looking for towards the top side. Spectral Maw coming out, Razork running forward, and that bear slap will still connect. Needlework doesn't do anything into 3 players from Misfits. HiRit will be given the kill.
Nicely done from Misfits. They get themselves their first kill of the game. And on to Jenax, no less. No flash means no way to get out.
I've worked it out, Vedi. I've worked it out.
What have you worked out?
You feed the Gwen, because then you possess her, and you're really strong.
I mean, sure, yeah.
It's
that's definitely
genius.
one
it's
strategy.
Viego
yes,
plays.
yeah. I mean, that is one of the power of Viego. The problem is you then have to kill Gwen. And fun fact, if Gwen gets another item, I don't know if they win that. She's deceptively, what's the word?
Disgusting? Overtuned.
No,
Powerful.
She gets like lifesteal from her passive, right? Which comes from her abilities, like her ult and her Q.
Sure.
Which means that when a large number of units come towards attacker, what you're actually just doing is giving her more sustain, while also dealing huge amounts of damage. So in a 2v1, she is actually surprisingly strong and has a huge amount of outplay potential, especially if she can use her W to mitigate some of the crowd control coming her way as well. So Gwen has huge amounts of outplay potential, and it's what makes her such an effective split pusher. And you think that she's weaker in fights, and like, on the one hand, yes, she is, because she doesn't get easy backline target access. But because of the long range of her ultimate, you hit the front line while also hitting the back line. And the thing about her ult is you need to be hitting another target in between the uses of your ult, which is very easy to do if you just keep hitting the front line. So she is, again, deceptively powerful in team fights as well, but it's very much down to the talent of the Gwen player. Her ultimate is not the easiest to land. So we'll see. Is Jenax a good Gwen player? I'm excited to find out.
Right now, looking otherwise going to go down onto Razork as Treatz looks to catch out his enemy man. Jez is there as well, and Twohoyrz now on a killing spree. The only player on the SK lineup to pick up any kills. He has 3 of them, so he's in a pretty powerful spot right now. 7,500 gold, about 800 ahead of his lane opponent.
He is pretty much where the gold lead for SK is coming from right now. And that was a good pick onto Razork. He was trying to set up vision control around the second Rift Herald so that they could look to contest it, but he ended up getting caught out. Vander wasn't really in a position to offer assistance. Razork didn't want to flash, which means that SK get themselves another kill. Will get themselves the Rift Herald. Treatz will also tick on over to level 12. So a 2-level advantage over Razork. And the top tower will go down. They can also then use the Rift Herald to secure the mid tower as well. Everything looking up for SK.
Oh, it definitely is. It's a pretty clean play from them so far. 2,500 gold lead, and very obvious strategy of getting 2 hours ahead in the early game. And it's a lot of weight to be put on the shoulders of your mid laner as well, especially when he's only come in pretty fresh this week. It wasn't really expected that Blue wouldn't be able to play.
Well, I think what's great for 2 hours is that he's doing a lot of this himself, right? They're his rogues, that it's his decisions, it's his finding these opportunities to get these leads, and it's not really SK funneling all these gold leads into him. And that's kind of what you want from a mid laner, right? To be self-sufficient, to be able to find their own leads, because then when you do give them resources, they're only going to be even more efficient with them. So definitely a great debut for 2 hours, and we'll see what he can do as we move into the team fights, because the Drake is spawning in about 35 seconds. You imagine that both teams want to try and get their hands on it to start getting ahead in the Drake race, but at the same time, you are okay giving up this Drake. So perhaps Misfits will sit there and say, you know what, we want to keep on scaling. We've got our first item completed for Vetheo and Kobbe, but perhaps we don't feel confident enough just yet. Perhaps they want to get themselves a little bit more itemization under their belt before they want to commit to any big fights, because they're going to lose. They've already lost top. They're going to lose bot. The Herald is going to get dropped mid, and they're going to lose that as well. So it's a matter of Misfits have to make a decision at some point of when they are ready to fight, and it looks like now is the time.
Yeah, HiRit's already down here, so you have to expect Misfits to want to take this fight. Kobbe not really with the team. Vetheo in the mid lane is going to be met by 2 hours and Jenax, but this Dragon already down to about half HP. Jez is trying to come in from the bottom side. It's a pincer movement here from SK. Treatz with the swell seed. It's dodged by everyone. Flash hook. Treatz goes in. A 3-man sleep's going to land here. Where is the follow-up? Here goes Gwen. Vander taken down first. Jez is going forward onto Vetheo as well. HiRit trying to dive back in, looking for the resets. Jesiz just about gets enough shield to survive. So does Jenax. And both of them walk out alive.
Ends up being 1 kill for SK in favor of the Drake for Misfits. So overall, relatively even trade. Oh, of course, SK were able to get themselves the mid-tier 1 tower. Apologies about missing that one. So they're just going to actually extend their gold lead even further. Let's have a look back at this one. So Treatz with a really good engage here. Flash into the queue to get a multi-man sleep off of. Jenax is then going to follow that up with the ultimate. And then he's going to look to try and close the gap as quickly as possible. Look how much damage he's able to mitigate here with his W as well. Avoids the Death Ray, avoids the Q from Kobbe, avoids the Chaos Storm. Just goes to show how deceptively powerful she can be in these team fights. And then when the re-engage comes through from Misfits, that is when SK choose to disengage from the fight. And Jenax is able to pick up his first kill of the game as well, deciding to go for the Nash's Tooth second. Bit of a deviation from the Kana build where he goes for a very early Zhonya's. I think this core duo of items, she is so powerful now in the 1v1. Even in a 1v2, I would hedge my bets on the Gwen. So I'm really excited to see her continue to play out throughout the rest of this game, because I don't think that Misfits really have a strong answer for the Gwen in the side lane. Perhaps I underestimate how powerful the Viego can be.
So with this core of items, Vedi, in Master Tier Plus, globally, what do you think her win rate is on 11-12? So that is 1 patch ahead.
I'm going to say 58%.
59%. You're very close.
That's quite high.
That is quite high. And of course, solo queue doesn't directly translate to professional play, but basically what we're telling you is
this champion is strong at this point in the game.
You know how Ornn used to be like the melee tank, DPS, bruiser, etc. mage? Gwen is now that. Gwen is all of that plus more because you can dodge all of your skills in the middle of it. She is absolutely devastating to have to play against, and that's why it was a surprise to us that Misfits decided not to ban it away, instead going for the Lulu ban as their final lock away.
And you can see right now that SK have pressure all across the board because they've taken down Misfits tier 1 towers and they haven't lost any, which means that it's very difficult for Misfits to actually push a wave in deep and give them a big window to actually rotate. Instead, they're constantly forced to catch all of these waves over and over and over again, because if they're not, look at the top lane. Jenax pushes in that wave, it's now threatening the top tier 2. That's a lot of farm that could potentially go to waste, whereas Jenax gets a reset and now has got himself the stopwatch and can actually TP and join and fight. He's actually going to group up with this team.
They're going to do this.
Misfits are just kind to force a play right now. They need to try and remove some of the pressure that SK is consistently looking to exert. It will just be a control ward for now, as they've decided, no, we got to go catch these waves. So SK utilizing their pressure well, and I want to now see them use this window that they have to get some deeper vision, because they know that Vetheo is top lane, they know that some of the Misfit members are looking to reset, and as you can see, they're now utilizing their pressure to move up into the top river, clear out the vision that Misfits have just set up for themselves, and then potentially get this deeper vision in the top side, try and steal away some of these camps, maybe even contest for Misfits red buff, because they're definitely strong enough to do it.
Yep.
It's just a matter of, will SK actually pull the trigger?
Importantly though for Misfits, Kobbe is now at 2 completed items, Divine Sunderer and the Mura Mana, because you get Mura Mana, as you said yesterday.
Mana.
Complete here for the Ezreal, and Kobbe will be outputting a lot of DPS in these fights if he can get some poke off. You'll see, just the ultimate is a quarter of Jezu's health bar. Alongside that, Vetheo has got himself a stopwatch and a Luden's complete. SK may be looking for something here. 2Hours does have TP. Razork's going to face check into Jenax, who is stunned immediately, but the needlework comes out. Razork going back in, loading Lullaby only onto Vetheo. He's going to pop his stopwatch. Here's the TP coming in from Misfits as they look to take the fight.
Jenax has used, though, his ultimate and his W, which means that that's a lot of damage suddenly gone for SK, but Razork forced to disengage just a bit, loses a decent amount of health. Vetheo capturing the top wave, and SK using this prio in mid. Question is, what will they convert it into?
It was a TP for a TP trade in the end of it all. HiRit coming in, as did 2Hours, 20 seconds on the Dragon. Would only be the third for Misfits or the second for SK, so not too consequential overall. Across the board, it looks like 2 items for everyone. All of the carries, apart from Razork, who's sitting on a Frozen Fist. The supports, of course, still a long way away from their 2 items. Not even one complete on Vander right now. He's gone for that stopwatch as the Braum, just to keep himself a little bit more safe, almost towards his locket, though he must actually pretty much have that, but he can't go back because the fight is about to start. Locket could have been game-changing in this next fight. There's the True Shot barrage, hits onto 2. Razork flashes in and Treatz is down. No ability for that Lillia to impact the fight. Vetheo kills off Jesiz and Misfits strike.
Misfits don't have a lot of engage options, but the one that they do, they're used very effectively. Flashing onto Treatz, being able to burst him down before the rest of SK can react is more than enough to give Misfits that Drake and potentially set up for that Baron. You can see that SK trying to push in these waves, trying to get some vision control so they can at the very least contest, as Vander now makes his way back out onto the map.
There's nothing I love more than a good flash bear slap, and that's exactly what Razork did to his enemy jungler. Treatz, only in his 2nd professional game in the jungle, was caught out there, and now perhaps has cost his team a Baron. 2Hours. He's had a very good game so far. The needlework coming in from Jenax, but he needs to get those auto attacks off to get the reset procs. Baron down to 700 secured. Jenax will retreat, SK will retreat, and Misfits have just had an incredible series of plays. Vetheo still going to be chased here for a second, but it looks like everyone from Misfits will be able to get back safely.
And so we talked a little bit about this in the draft, where when you look at the front-to-back composition from Misfits, it's quite difficult to actually play against. Look at the long-range damage that comes out from Kobbe. Here's the flash bear slap from Razork. Lands it on the Treatz, and look at how quickly everyone from Misfits can collapse and fall off. And the Braum mitigation damage was just huge from Vander, soaking up so much threat that SK was trying to throw out. In that narrow choke point meant that there was little that SK could do to turn that fight around. And then a couple of the resets that HiRit was able to get means that he's now level 16, and Misfits looking strong.
Still slightly behind in terms of gold, but they are one dragon away from a Cloud Soul. They have Baron for the next 2 minutes, and we'll see what they can do with this Red Bull Baron power play. They have a lot of different options. You can see Vetheo building up towards a Void Staff here on the Viktor as well. 300 CS at the 28-minute mark, going on along at a fair old clip. And we saw this from Misfits yesterday as well, Vedius. A weak early game, or a few mistakes in the early game. The enemy team getting some early kills, getting an early gold lead, but then when it gets to team fights, when it gets to these more coordinated plays, Misfits are starting off summer season very successfully.
I feel like that the meta is still very much about team fighting, right? And while we are seeing a couple more split push champions, I feel like that we're yet to see teams truly leverage some of the real strength that these split pushes have. They end up just grouping, and that's not to say that SKs can't team fight, right? But I think that the execution is just that bit harder when playing against Misfits comp, because think about it, all Kobbe and Vetheo have to do is throw out their skill shots over and over and over again, and SK have to find a way of coming into that while also then finding a good flight with their limited crowd control. And so I think that Misfits, as long as they just kind of play it slow, take their time, it's just easier for them to actually set up around these objectives and come out ahead in the fights. And especially if Misfits get a single kill, the resets start to come through for HiRit, and that's why things really start to get a lot more difficult.
They don't know he's there. He doesn't know they're there.
I feel like he has a feeling that they're there.
He definitely has a sensation as Razork and Kobbe are going to come across as well. SK maybe looking for this. Razork runs into the bush, and Twohoyrz is like, nope, I'm having none of that. Backs away immediately. Mid lane, tier 2 is the target here. Dodge away there by Kobbe. Arcane shifts. Swirl Seed hits onto 2. There's the sleep. SK know they have a man advantage right now because Vetheo is in the mid lane. Killer Instinct from Jezu immediately exhausted, but Treatz Kobbe is down first. And here comes the follow-up. Vander falls second. The shutdowns rain down for SK. HiRit can do nothing as SK get 4 kills in the bottom lane.
Beautiful answer from SK, and just a really big punish as Vetheo is not there to assist Misfits in the fight. Kobbe just looked like he was chain CC'd forever. The sleep came through, the follow-up CC from Jesiz, and then the damage from Jenax in Twohoyrz just blew him up before he could really do anything. Misfits were able to get themselves to tier 2 in mid and almost to tier 3, but they end up losing a huge fight 4-1. So very well played by SK. They maintain the gold lead for now.
Okay. Veteo's challenging Twohoyrz here. He's got 3 items. Twohoyrz going to try and trade into it. Dodges away from the Chaos Storm. Steps back into the gravity field. Stunned up. And Vetheo gets himself 900 gold worth of shutdown.
Nice flash from Twohoyrz to dodge the burst, but unfortunately it wasn't enough. So here's the sleep come through. Then the ultimate from Jesiz knocks up Kobbe. Then he gets auto attack stunned. And then he's dead. So just beautiful chain CC coming out from SK, and then the chase just comes through. Misfits is basically playing to retreat at that point. They're not in a good position to fight. And really good play from SK overall. You can see the damage coming out from Gwen is relatively significant. Yeah. I mean, that was just largely her ult and her Q, by the way, just hitting onto multiple members.
Did more damage than the entire enemy team?
Well, I mean, she almost did more damage than her whole team. That was, yeah, Gwen. In any case, the thing is, you need the setup in order to do that. And I think that Misfits still have the advantage. Here we go.
This is Cloud Soul for Misfits. Jez is looking for a flank position, but he's all on his lonesome, and he's dead before help can arrive. Razork stepping in as well. The stun's going to land on the Treatz. Hook goes a little bit wide there from HiRit. Vander eats up the culling with his unbreakable shield. There's another sleep. Kobbe cleanses. He's got that QSS now.
Yeah, I thought they were just going to leave him there, and I was like, whoa, hang on. But yeah, as you rightly said, he was able to cleanse out of that one.
This is going to delay the backs.
Yeah, I think that's his plan.
Oh!
I thought that hit then.
That's a bit of a Z-axis thing there for the Legends.
Yeah. Will not be able to interrupt Jezu's back, but still they will get themselves the inhibitor. Is that a TP flank? Yes, it is.
Here comes Gwen. Let's see what Jenax can do in this situation. Oh my goodness, no. No.
That's one ult.
I just built it up so high.
That's two ults. Here we are.
He's going to face off against HiRit. Oh, Razork flashes in. 2 hours caught out, 2 hours shut down. And Jenax, I'm sorry for SK, but that TP sucked. He's caught in the middle of 5 of Misfits now. Here comes Jenax, and there he goes, limping back to the fountain, dead as a doornail as Misfits look to put the final nail in the coffin of this game. They will go 2-0 in their first 2 games here in the LEC, and even though their early games have been weak, their mid games have been sublime. Jezu dives in, Jezu dies immediately. And only the Nexus towers stand between Misfits and a perfect start to summer. Misfits take down SK and continue their undefeated record.
Good stuff from the side of Misfits. As you rightly said, they played it slow in the early game. They didn't really have a huge number of lanes to play around. Potentially top they could have been a little bit more active about, but they were scaling. They knew that they would be stronger in the 5v5, and they just got one very good team fight in the river. They were able to sidestep the engage from SK, and then they were able to get a really good re-engage thanks to Razork with his flash bear slap. And they were able to come out on top. They quickly converted that into a Baron. While they did lose one fight on the bot side of the map, I think the moment that Kobbe got his QSS, there was something like, okay, now that one engage option that they have has been removed. And yeah, SK, I feel like that they're drafting these difficult to execute comps, and they aren't quite successfully being able to pull them off. And it's got to feel frustrating because they're showcasing a lot of promise. And again, huge shout out to Twohoyrz, who has had 2 fantastic games, but unfortunately they're not converting those early leads into victories just yet.
Of course, that takes time, that takes development, and we'll see if they can continue to develop throughout the season. Kia player of the game votes at LEC on Twitter. Razork, Vetheo, and Kobbe are your options. Vedi, I think we have one conclusion that we can draw from that game.
What is it?
Gwen has a 0% win rate. She is overrated. Leave her open for every other game, guys. I'm sure it will work well. Yesterday, we saw impressive wins from Rogue and Vitality. And in Game 3, they go head-to-head. As Vitality's new players get their first big test.
We'll start off with this one.
The summer season?
What about this one?
Summer season. Summer season.
How about this one?
That's a Beko fridge.
It's a Beko fridge. Oh, it is a Beko fridge. Okay. And this one?
Summer season.
You're suffering from a simple case of LEC deficiency. Now what I'm going to do is prescribe you a healthy dose of LEC Summer Season, about twice a week or so.
everyone, to the opening week of LEC Summer. Before we get into Rogue versus Vitality, let's crown our Kia player of the game for Misfits, who just went 2-0. And that player of the game is Vetheo. 2 games in a row. Guldborg, really impressive start from him once again.
Yeah, what a surprise, really. Once again, yesterday's Akali game, absolutely phenomenal. The games today as well, he just keeps popping off. There is no limit for this guy.
There isn't, and I hope he can keep that up, because that is what Misfits is going to need to get to those playoffs in summer. But now let's focus on our next matchup, Rogue and Vitality, who both dominated in their opening games, and now we get to see them go head-to-head in Game 3. Now, Rogue, they were our second best team in spring, and we're going to take a closer look at their early game. Guldborg, explain to us what you are going to teach us about Rogue today.
Yeah, honestly, it's quite simple terms, really. We're going to be going over some wave management here from Rogue and how they actually utilize that to gain pressure around the map. And I'm just going to start the clip here by showing you Inspired, who's fully cleared all his jungle right now. So he's got some downtown that he can use. And right now, he's using this to shadow Larsen, which essentially just means that Larsen can push in without having to be afraid to go down to a gank or an engage. And I'm just going to pause the clip here, because you see they're actually coordinated about this. Down in the bot lane, Trimby and Hansama has started off a stacked wave here that's slow pushing onto the enemy side of Excel and Patrick here, and there's not much they can do about it. Trimby's presence is too much for them to actually come in and try and trim off some of this wave. You can actually take a look onto them here. They're trying to stop this dive from happening, and I'm going to pause the clip once again here, because as the dive is about to happen, we take a look onto the minimap, and you can see Inspired already behind them. Larsen, having the shadow before, has pushed in the mid lane and is now moving down as well. And this is creating a lot of pressure onto the XL bot lane, to the point where they just have to get the hell out of here. Summoner spells burn, that's the heal and flash gone. And Summer is getting the plates, TP is coming through, but I want to pause it once again. I want to take a look onto the minimap here. You can see Larsen already is like, all right, we blew 2 of the summoner spells, Nuke Dog TP'd. I'm just going to go straight back to mid lane here. And what this essentially does is they get a plate in mid lane as well. Nuke Dog is losing XP. They can play with all the pressure they want down towards this bot lane, because they blew all the summoner spells. And they're just going to keep at it here, to the point where you can see XL's bot lane, they just have to back up completely. I'm going to pause it here. I'm going to ask you to look at the kills. 0-0, 7 minutes into the game. You go down, you take a look onto the gold here. Patrick, 2,100. Hansama, 2,700, and also a 500 gold lead in the mid lane. And this is just something Rogue is so phenomenal at doing. They're great at wave management. This is the pressure you feel against them. This is what you feel when you play Rogue.
Okay, and I can understand that if you can't see it, at least if you're getting killed, okay, let's not get killed again. But in this case, it might be hard for the enemy team to react, because it's all happening and they're just feeling the pressure. They're feeling that they don't have as much vision. They can't push up as far, and that can feel very suffocating.
Yeah, for sure. But I will say, though, in this case scenario, we are looking at it in a vacuum where XL had 3 losing lanes. It's very easy for Rogue to do this as well, but they're just so consistent about it. We see it so often with them, and that's why today's matchup is going to be so exciting as well, because Vitality, they have a way of doing the same thing, but they do it with a much more aggressive style.
Yeah, let's parlay this into this matchup and move over to the video wall, where we'll be joined by Ender as well. So Vitality yesterday had a fantastic start to the Summer Split, and they were extremely aggressive, Guldborg. It was kind of a different flavor, because they also got advantages, but it was through pushing and it was through kills.
Yeah, I think the way that Vitality was really good at doing is they just wanted to create the skirmishes wherever they wanted. We talked about it a bit earlier in the pre-game as well, where SLT under Lulu would just abandon his lanes, run around as self-made support, and they were just running around in the enemy jungle, trying to create skirmishes, being ready with the vision control in the mid lane. You can already see it here. They were just doing a phenomenal job at finding picks.
And this is something that I think we want to continue to see from them, especially like looking at Selfmade trying his hand on a ganking jungler. It's nice to be reminded that Selfmade can play these more aggressive early picks, even if his style for so long has been that farming way. And I think we're going to continue to see more of that working with this aggressive leader in the mid lane, especially in the mid game. Leader and Selfmade and their ability to influence the rest of the map. It's going to be very important for Vitality to try and be able to break open mid, because like Guldborg was saying, like, In their game yesterday, Rogue had 3 winning lanes, but that's also just in 99% of all their games. Their draft is always to get these prio lanes, so it comes down to the jungler and the mid laner to break open the lanes, roam around, and transition that pressure around the map.
As we get out of this replay, I'd like to pull up the draft yesterday of Vitality versus Schalke 04 and Guldborg and Ender. I'd like you to kind of talk me through what in this draft they could replicate to try and get the win to stave off that pressure that Rogue brings, or what changes they will have to bring in if they want to beat the spring finalists.
I actually think this is fine. You already got yourself an S-tier bot lane down here with Twohoyrz and Braum. There's a lot of disengage, there's a lot of engage you can come across as well, and it just synergizes a lot, what do you say, synergizes really well with the side of Xin Zhao and Viego here. I think you got all the early game presence you really need here with this Xin Zhao. I think XL had a Xin to play for yesterday as well, but they didn't really have the tools with the lane pressure to do so. I think here with Vitality, they do have that, and I'm not even sure they're going to be bringing this out, because we talked about Vitality, such a triple threat team. It might not even be SLT on the Lulu. It could be Laprov next time for all we know.
Yeah, I think we almost do not talk about the bot lane because that selfmade coming into the roster and leader was such a big deal, but we got to remember, Crown Shot, no selfmade very well. Labrov has really been ramping up as well, Ender. So if everything comes together for this team, they could very well beat Rogue today.
I think it's going to be a really good challenge for Vitality, because on paper, I think everyone has to say that Rogue are the favorites. And we've seen that if you allow Rogue to play their style, even the best teams in our league, the top teams like Mad Lions, G2, they still struggle to play Rogue when they are into that more controlled pressure type of game. So for me, Vitality, I want to see them try to make it a little bit more frantic, especially around the mid game. And we saw some good roams from Labrov in that game yesterday. If we see more looks like that, then that's how Vitality can try to get a lead.
Yeah, and we can only see it in a kind of vacuum from the side of Vitality right now, because we only have that one game from them so far. But with Rogue, we always know that they are very respectful towards their opponent. They're very good at reading the map towards, all right, where do we need to set up a better line of defense according to vision? Where do we need to cross map? But on the side of Vitality, from what we saw yesterday, they were all about attacking. So it's going to be a fun game today with either we're going to be seeing Rogue trying to find out, all right, where is Vitality attacking? Where can we cross map? Do we actually handshake this skirmish, or are we actually taking camps from you elsewhere while we're respecting our opponent who's very aggressive?
And we have to remember that Rogue, when they went for a different style, when they had to be more aggressive against the likes of G2, even against the likes of Mad in that final, they were also able to play that style. And I think often we just pretend like, well, they're just that tactical team that likes to play it slow in the early game, but they don't always have to do that. And I wonder, Ender, if that is what's going to come out in this game specifically. That would give us probably the most fun game to watch.
I mean, it certainly would. And the thing is, it's not that Rogue are not a good early game team. They're probably the best early game team. Them, Mad Lions, have been so strong at it. They just don't kill you, right? And they will just come out of the laning phase with CS advantages. And if, well, leader we know loves to play these melee mid lane champions, he's probably going to be down 10, 20 CS against Larson, which is why the emphasis on Vitality is, even if Rogue don't decide to go for kills in the early game or really contest Vitality, Vitality will have to, or they will just fall behind off of strong laning and pressure management, just like Guldborg broke down earlier.
Well, this is a very big first test for the new Vitality lineup as they go up against one of the LEC's best teams in Rogue after the break.